built into a living temple. We're going to talk about that more today. That's a very important idea. Christ is the cornerstone. We are smaller stones, but we're to be equally alive and to be built together. Every stone is important. If you have a brick house and you knock a brick or two loose in a place or two, what happens? Well, moisture creeps in, and then termites follow, and black mold, and you have a mess. We are built together. That's the let us part of being a building. But building is also something we do. It's what we do. It's not an option, it's a command. And it's something that we have to do together. Think about it. One man, no matter how skilled, one man with one axe, the best he can build is a hut or maybe a small cabin. If you want a truly worthy structure, you need multiple people bringing multiple materials with multiple skills. You need electricians and drywall workers and concrete finishers and just the whole range of things to really build an adequate building. Well, if we are building as a congregation, we've got to bring all of our skills together, all of the gifts that Scripture talks about that are given to us. It takes more hands and more strength than you've got in one person. You've got to rise up. And rise up means resolve. It means paying attention. You can't build anything worthy with an on-again, off-again construction worker. They're watching YouTube videos and laughing, and they drive a nail or two every now and then, don't know how straight or how well placed. Or the foreman shows up, and he stays in the car, and he's on the phone talking to his wife, talking to his stockbroker, not paying attention, not on task. You can't build. Building requires concentrated effort, coordinated effort. Rise up and build. That's our challenge. And building is a task for us. We discussed that last week. It's not for them. It's not for you all. It's not for him over there. He needs to rise up and build. Why don't they rise up and build? It's for us to rise up and build. And if it's worth doing seriously with all of our attention and effort. And we have to realize that it's God's building. It's not ours. So all those things we need to keep in mind. But our focus today is on the third part of that challenge. Let us rise up and build. The first 11 chapters of Genesis tell the story of two great building projects in the history of humanity. One is the building of a box, a really big box, big enough to save humanity, big enough to save all the creatures on this planet. We call it an ark. The other great building project was a tower. And this tower was supposed to reach to heaven, and it turned out to be a failure. But together, they provide a great object lesson for us as we're thinking about building, thinking about what we're going to build, what we're going to build it out of, and what we're going to accomplish with our building. Let's look at Noah's Ark first. Psalm 127:1 says, "Unless the Lord builds the house, those who labor labor in vain." So paying attention to how we build. Building an ark. Somehow these slides are not showing what I saw, and even the same size. I don't know what's going on there. First is, make yourself an ark of gopher wood. First instructions that Noah got. That's in chapter 6, I believe it is. Maybe it's chapter 8. When we're building, we want to follow God's blueprints, God's pattern, if you will. Let's think about the instructions that Noah had. 8 things, only 8 things, but 8 specific things God said. Number one, use gopher wood. Your translation might say cypress wood. Different translations translate that wood differently. First thing, number two, make it 300 by 50 by 30 cubits. Make it out of this material, make it this size, cover it with pitch. We forget about some of the rest. Install 3 levels to be a 3-tiered inside. Divide it into rooms. Put in one door, put that door in the side, not the top. Put on a roof and leave a 1 cubit, like an 18-inch gap around the top. I guess that was for ventilation and light to come through. God gave clear instructions. But think about this. Think about all the instructions he did not give. He left a lot to Noah's discretion. He didn't say what kind of fasteners to use. He didn't say where to place the beams or how many beams to put in. He didn't say how many rooms to make. He didn't say what to make the roof of. He didn't say what pitch to give the roof. Should it be a 9-12? Should it be a 5-12? He didn't say any of that. He didn't say how to restrain the animals. He didn't say how much food to bring to feed the animals. He didn't say how to restrain the animals. He didn't say how to deal with the waste from the animals. He didn't say anything about building a kitchen or beds. None of that. My personal feeling is, or at least I hope, those animals went into hibernation, kind of a semi-hibernation, so they weren't eating voraciously and creating lots of waste and all this kind of stuff. We don't know. I would imagine with a rocking ark, dark, stormy weather for those first 40 days at least, maybe they just kind of slept through it, we hope. But there's a lesson for us here as we're building. Let's look at that lesson first. God gives us a blueprint. We need to follow that. But he is silent about our building, about many details. You know, Jesus is Lord. That's the confession of Matthew 16:18. You are the Christ, the Son of the living God. And Jesus says, on that rock I will build my church. So the foundation, Jesus is the Christ. He's the Son of God. That's the foundation for our building. It's real clear. Sometimes we get too involved on the details we add to the instructions, the blueprint that God gives. We get wrapped up on, details, exactly how should singing go, exactly what translation you should use in some churches, all these kind of details. They become points of discussion and debate and disagreement and even division. That's not part of the blueprint. Those are things that we do to bring the blueprint into form. So when we say follow the plan, that's a good plan. Follow the plan. We need to make sure it's God's plan. Clear commands. Sometimes we build an edifice out of inferences. Well, it says this here and it says that there, and if I put these two together and I look at it this way, then we need to do something else. And we get all wrapped up in those details that we're adding to the blueprint to try to flesh it out. I want to be careful. Clear instructions, but lots of leeway. That's a guideline, I think, for us. But let's think about what we're building with. Building an ark of gopher wood. What is gopher wood? What is the building material that we're to build with? What do we build with? Jesus said the greatest command is to love the Lord your God with all your heart, all your mind, all your soul, and all your strength. The second is to love your neighbor as yourself. Now that's some pretty good building material, isn't it, for a church? A church that's built on a deep love for God, a deep commitment to God, and a deep love for individual people. That's good building material. You know, Paul reinforced that message about the right gopher wood. He wrote to Corinthians, 1 Corinthians 13. He said, if you have faith, enough faith to move mountains. If you give away everything that you have, And if you have the courage to die as a martyr, but you don't have love, all your bold proclamations, all of your earnest studies, all of your benevolent activities, it's just annoying noise. He says you might as well be standing out on the street corner banging two cymbals together if you don't have love. So we know that the building material of God's kingdom has got to be built on Jesus is Lord. He is the Christ, the Son of the living God, and then love for him and love for individual people. You know, love is not just sappy feelings about other people, sentimentalism. It's sincerely wanting what's best for other people and doing what's best for somebody else, even if it costs you a lot. And then you go on from there, of course. But that's the foundation. That's the basic raw materials that we build with. That's what's important. What happens when you build the church as an ark, when the ark becomes a model for the church? You build it to be an ark. You build it in the right way, out of the right materials, then it becomes a refuge. That's what the ark was. 1 Peter 3 talks about that. Humanity saved through the ark. What does the church save people from? Not from a flood. The church saves people from the past, from all of those things that we've done that we wish to goodness we hadn't done. We wish we could undo it. We wish we could make it go away. The church, Jesus Christ's blood, and the fellowship of the church washes that away, takes that away. It rescues us from the past. It rescues us from the influences, present influences that would pull us away, that would corrupt us, that would stain us. It's a refuge and a place of refuge. That's why the fellowship is so important. Come here and encourage each other. There's a lot of mud slung around outside. Just turn on your TV and turn on your phone. You're going to get hit with some kind of mud. And if that doesn't get you memories, conscience, regrets, the church is here to rescue us from that, rescue us for eternity. Now, the voyage in the ark, like the voyage in Noah's ark, is going to have rough spots. We all know that. We've all probably felt them. And the ark is going to get rocked, and some people are going to get seasick. But the ark, the church, was commissioned by God to do its job. And it can do its job. It will do its job. And I don't know if Noah's ark had any leaks. Maybe he pitched it well enough it didn't. Our arks today leak. We're always having to pump the water out of the bottom and patch up leaks. That's part of it. But despite all of that, God commissioned the church as his ark for our age. And if we stay in the ark, build it right, keep it patched, it will save us. That's not to say that the blood of Christ doesn't matter, any of that. We all know that ultimately it is the blood of Christ. But the blood of Christ doesn't just flow out into the world. He chose a church of redeemed people to buoy each other up. And that's the point. 3 chapters later, in Genesis 11, we read about a very different kind of building. And sometimes this becomes a model for building churches. It's absolutely the wrong model. This building originated in man's initiative. Let me just read a few verses here from 11. Chapter 11 of Genesis, starting in verse 1. Now the whole world had one language and a common speech. As men moved eastward, they found a plain in Shinar and settled there. They said to each other, God's not speaking, they're just talking to each other. Come, let's make bricks and bake them thoroughly. They used brick instead of stone and tar for mortar. Then they said, Come, let us build ourselves a city with a tower that reaches to the heavens, so that we may make a name for ourselves and not be scattered over the face of the whole earth. Well, let's build a tower and a city for ourselves. This was man's initiative. They were building it to benefit themselves with their own image in mind, if you will, not to rescue others. They had what you might call an edifice complex. We want to build something great. We want to leave something. It's going to be a building. And they focused on a physical structure. It was intended to diminish the difference between God and man, but not to serve God and not on God's instructions. They don't need to build a tower to get in touch with God. A few verses later, look in verse 5. But the Lord came down to see the city and the tower that the men were building. Whoa, God will come down if he wants to see you. You don't build a tower and crash heaven, and burst your way in. And they didn't come there to find out God's will for them. They wanted to build a tower to the heavens to make of themselves gods. They wanted to challenge God's position over all and put themselves in that position. Their purpose was to keep everybody in one place. Let's build a great big city and everybody can live here. And then we can do lots of things. Now, they had forgotten about the instructions God gave Adam and Eve. Genesis 1:28, be fruitful and multiply and fill the earth and subdue it. They were supposed to be scattered, to fill the earth. They said, no, let's stick together, all in one place. Look how big and strong and mighty we can be. We can become self-sufficient spiritually and in every other way. God comes down and says, do you know what? There's not much limit to what they can do if they all stay together. But they need to fill the earth. They don't need to stay here and build some big structure. So God scrambles their language, and they are scattered throughout the world. They're trying to make a name for themselves instead of doing the task. Sometimes people attempt to build churches in an effort to build a name for themselves and a name for their ministry or whatever it might be. But it's an impulse towards, I guess the buzzword is centralization. We see it at the highest levels. Nations saying, you know what, we just need one world government. We just need one. We could all be united. Wouldn't that be great? Well, what's that about? That's about accumulating, consolidating power, consolidating control. It's just the name of the game. Same thing happens. Sometimes we get mega churches that are built to glorify human effort. We get churches with satellite campuses, extend our control over other places. We get denominational headquarters. We want to control all these other congregations. Elderships trying to build networks through which they control other churches. None of that is biblical. It's just not. But let's centralize. Let's extend our control. Get it all in one place, and we will be that place. That's the danger. Well, Jesus told the apostles to go into all the world and preach the good news. Years later, they were still in Jerusalem. We don't know exactly how many years. We used to say Jesus was executed in 33 A.D. Now, most scholars, I think, probably say it was A.D. 30. We know it wasn't 29 or 31 because the moon had to be in the right place for all these reasons. So maybe as little as 1 year, maybe as much as 4 or 5 years later, they're still in Jerusalem. And we know the story of Stephen and the persecution that followed. They were driven out. They fled to Samaria and to the uttermost parts of the world. They had to be driven out. The temptation is to stay in one place and consolidate power there. Now, none of that's to condemn large congregations. They're great to be a part of. Conferences, coordinated works can be good things, but the question is what motivates those kind of efforts? Are we sincerely trying to build an ark to rescue people? Or are we building a monument to our own magnificence? That's the bottom line? That's the question. Another issue we need to talk about. What is our building material? God specified the material, gopher wood, cypress wood, for Noah. They picked their own project, and they picked their own material. And what did they pick? They took mud, and they baked it, and stacked it up. They made their own bricks. God didn't mandate that material. They grabbed whatever was plentiful, whatever was nearby, and they just used that to build. Well, you can build churches out of a lot of cultural mud. It's nearby, it's available, it's cheap. Let's just build with that. And if we're not careful, we want to build churches out of spiritual mud, wood, straw, stubble of popular culture. Get some strobe lights, some smoke, get a celebrity vibe and a consumer mentality, and we kind of build a church. But I'm afraid that's probably a tower built out of spiritual mud. It's not substantial. It's not permanent. When you build out of mud, and a church that is building out of mud has a kind of consumer mentality, the church will put on a good service. It's like a good performance. And people come and they enjoy the service. Is that building up? That's the question. But you can build out of other kinds of mud. There's a mud of traditions. You just build out of phrases you always heard, and you repeat them, and you try to build your church just out of these traditional things. Keep the words, the phrases, the actions that used to have meaning, and the meaning is kind of leached out of. You don't even know why you say them, don't know why you do them, you just do them. That's spiritual mud. You're just grabbing what's available. This is what we've always done. Let's keep building with that. And we don't know why. That's a problem. When the gospel of Jesus Christ, which is tremendously exciting, when it becomes rule upon rule, here a little, there a little, then we've got a problem. We're building out of mud. So what are we building? Are we building places? Are we building a kingdom? Europe is littered with huge cathedrals all over the place. Most of them are a little more than just museums. Over the space of 1,000 years, churches went from meeting in catacombs to meeting in these magnificent cathedrals. And now they're just places to go and appreciate the past, not really to engage in the present. Herod's temple in Jerusalem, it was a bona fide tower. It was a tower project instead of an ark project. As we know, Herod, what he did was he rebuilt the second temple, the temple that Zerubbabel built. Whenever the Israelites left the Babylonian captivity, they came back and they built. It was on the same basic footprint, same foundation at least, as Solomon's temple. But it was smaller, it was plainer. When the few old people who had seen Solomon's temple and now came back 70 years later, when they saw this second temple going up, they cried, they wept. These weren't tears of joy. They cried because this temple wasn't nearly as nice as the one the Babylonians had destroyed. Other kings did some improvements, but when King Herod came to the throne, about, I think it was around 20 BC or something like that, he started a tremendous building project, and he made the temple to Jehovah God the most magnificent temple in the entire Roman Empire. Covered with gold, the Jewish historian Josephus said you couldn't even look at it in the sunlight because the reflection was so bright. Built out of the richest materials, source of pride for the whole nation. But Jesus wasn't impressed. Really, I mean, Herod just loved building things, and this was partly just to leave a legacy for himself. I'm the man who did this to the Jewish temple. Jesus wasn't impressed. His last couple of days before his crucifixion, one of the disciples said, "Look at that temple, isn't it magnificent?" And he said, "Look at it, destroy it in 3 days, I'll build it back." It's not so great. It's not so wonderful. It was about to be replaced, and it was replaced. We'll talk about how it was replaced in just a minute. But if you're a trivia buff, think about this. Babylon destroyed Solomon's temple, and Rome destroyed Herod's temple on the same day. Jeremiah 52:12 says Solomon's temple was destroyed on the 10th of Av, the month of Av, in 586 BC. Josephus, that Jewish historian, said Herod's temple was destroyed on the 10th of Av, AD 70. Maybe that's not a coincidence. Maybe when we put too much value in a physical location, God will wipe it out. He certainly did with those two Jewish temples. Very magnificent temple, it turned out to be a tower. Temporary, impressive for a moment, and soon eliminated. Place of marvels, a place of memories. That's what it was. What replaced that temple? Matthew 18:20, Jesus said, "Wherever 2 or 3 are gathered together in my name, there am I in the midst of them." What was a temple for? A temple was designed to meet God. It was a place for the priest to represent the people to God and to deal with the people's sins. A temple is a meeting place with God. Jesus said, "Wherever 2 or 3 are gathered together, I will be there in their midst." We don't have to build a big temple to attract God to come. He says, if just 2 people are gathered in my name, I'll be there. Don't build me a tower. Just meet together with like precious faith, and I'll be there. The temple was built to meet God. God said, we don't need that temple anymore. Curtain was torn, the temple destroyed. Now God just meets with us. In many nations today, in the Middle East, Asia, Africa, many places, little churches meet in houses, they meet in warehouses, they meet in the basements of businesses, all kinds of out-of-the-way places, constantly under surveillance, constantly evading arrest and attack, but they are crackling with spiritual life. They're real buildings with living stones. Don't need big buildings. Buildings are nice. We have a nice building here. We all appreciate that. But buildings are not the church. Put it another way. Church buildings are where the church stays. It's not where the church lives. Our life is in Christ. And this is just like a rental property. We stay here. It's a hotel room, if you will. And it's not our living quarters. Here's a sad statistic along those lines. I found a website. It specializes in selling unused church buildings to people who want to remodel them into their houses. And you say, well, there that many? The website said 6,000 to 10,000 church buildings per year close in the United States. And there's a lot of reasons for that. People want bigger congregations. Travel is easier. It's easier to get in your car and go 10 miles instead of getting a horse and buggy and go 5. Those kinds of things. So people want larger congregations. Shortage of qualified preachers. That's a sad reality across every kind of church. It's just fewer people going into ministry. Fewer believers. That's sad but true. So just 6,000 to 10,000 church buildings per year on the market. And they say it's a great place to build your house, remodel into a house. A lot of them are beautiful, made of stone, architecturally striking, have stained glass. Wouldn't that be a cool house? The only cooler building to restructure into a home, I think, would be a Carnegie Library. I think that'd make a great house, So if you had the money to remodel it. But the point is this. No matter what structures we build And our structures do make a statement to the community. We are here, we're a part of this community, and we invite you in. They have all those values. But eventually, buildings have a lifespan. And that's just the sad reality. The church's main work, its main expenditure, its main focus must never be the place where it meets or the name it goes by. People move, traffic patterns change. We're involved in building something else. Trying to build an ark. So what are we trying to build? If the church is an ark, exactly what should it be doing? What is the ark? I think the ark is the gospel. The church should proclaim the gospel. It should house the gospel. The church needs to be a place where the gospel can not only be heard, more important than that, or at least as important as hearing the gospel in the church, people need to see the gospel in the church. And what's the point of proclaiming it if people come and they don't see it? Well, that's a nice message. That all sounds real good, but what effect is it having on you? You see the point. We have to take that to heart. Acts 2:21, everyone who calls upon the name of the Lord shall be saved. Romans 10:9, if you confess with your mouth that Jesus is Lord and believe in your heart that God raised him from the dead, you will be saved. Romans 13:10, for everyone who calls upon the name of the Lord shall be saved. Do they see people calling on the name of the Lord, confessing the Lord's name? Calling upon means depending on. That involves baptism. 2 Peter 3 talks about the ark and baptism and calling upon God's name, all three of those things. It says that in the ark, 8 persons were brought safely through water. And baptism, which corresponds to this, now saves you, not as a removal of dirt from the body, but as an appeal to God for a good conscience through the resurrection of Jesus Christ. What's the sinner's prayer? He says baptism is the sinner's prayer. That's the appeal to God for a good conscience. This is how we appeal. So we need to proclaim that message. But the church needs to be more than just a message. It needs to be lives and living beings. Here's the danger. If we think of the church as a system of doctrine, then we're tempted to think this way. Okay, we've got the church built properly. We've got the right doctrines. It's all sound. We've got the right way of doing things in the right order. And if they're not the only way, they're certainly an acceptable way, and they're the best way, and people need to do it this way. Get into that mindset. Then you've got the building. It is complete. And you don't need to do anything from that point forward. It's just not mess it up. So you have the truth once for all delivered to the saints. We protect that structure, that system of doctrine. We hold the line. We defend the faith. We protect the fort. We stay vigilant against all enemies, domestic and foreign, looking out for dangers out there. Just make sure nothing changes and we've done our job. That's the danger of thinking of the church, not as a building now, but thinking of the church as just a set of doctrines, a set of practices, this way of doing things. Things that may be okay. Are they the only way? There's a question. Here's the last point I want to make. If we want to build a building that will last forever, that building is people. It's individual lives. Every one of us here in this room, we will be in existence long after this building is gone, long after this nation is gone, long after this planet is gone. We will be there. We are eternal. If you want to build an eternal building, you build within people. You build people. That's why 1 just as you are doing. The building is each other. It's not a place. It's not even a church structure. Individuals are the building. We're building men and women of integrity, compassion, faith, who are bearing the fruit of the Spirit, who are bearing the image of Christ. That's what we're building within ourselves, within each other, encouraging each other to that. Romans 8:29 says we're predestined to be conformed to the image of Christ. That's what we're building towards, each individual one of us, conformed to the image of Christ. 2 Corinthians 3:8 says we're being conformed to that image by the Spirit of Christ. 1 Corinthians 11:1, Paul told the people in Corinth, imitate me as I imitate Christ. That's why we need to be together. Because true faith and true love is catching. It's a good infection. When you're loved, you learn to be more loving. When you have faith, people learn to have faith because of your faith. We need to all share those qualities as we work together, try to build together individually, becoming more and more alive, built into that image. And that construction project starts early and it lasts a lifetime. It's our job to be a part of that. Everything we do takes a lifetime to build. You got young children, your spiritual duty is to rear them, to teach them, to sing to them, to bring the little Bible classes and they can pat the little Bible and sing little songs. Instill those things. That is your job. As you get older, we grow in different ways, but it takes a lifetime of training, instruction, living examples. As we get older, we've got to encourage each other. It's easy to get weary in well-doing. I have had it. I'm giving up. Come on, brother. I'm with you. Let's go another mile. Let's see if we can do it. And we just keep on keeping on. We're building eternity in each other. Our time is about up. One day, there's not going to be any more church buildings, not going to be any preachers, there won't be any elders or deacons, won't be any baptisms or baptistries or mission societies or mourners' benches or song leaders or benevolent ministries or Bible classes. All of those things are going to be gone. All of those things are means to building eternity within each other. That's the building. Let us rise up and build. That's what we need to be building. Next week we'll start our new series on different places Jesus went and the different sort of social and cultural environments he entered, in many ways similar to ours, and how he dealt with them. We'll start with that next week. Thanks.